that's essentially like, it's not a technique. Cowgirl copper is like a tonal direction, right? So it's just kind of different shades of like distressed leather and kind of like old Western wear, Western attire. And then at a level 8, 3-4, which is a gold red. So then it's a little bit of a softer, a little bit deeper copper in with that brighter copper, but they're both, it's still bright. It's a level 8 and 9. And I mixed that with 40 volume. So I went all the way up to 40 volume because it being Cowgirl copper, I don't really care so much if the tonality is like washed up a little bit with that 40 volume. If I wanted to see more of the tonality come through, then I would mix it with a 30 volume probably. But I want to get a little more lift and I want to get a little bit more dimension in her hair, and I want to see different tones of copper coming through to show off the technique a little bit. Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead with that level 7 volume with the 20, and we're going to apply that to her roots all over. You like, literally, cowboy copper is just all of the shades of copper mixed with some natural qualities and tonalities in there, which means browns and gold there. And now we're gonna go ahead and do zigzag parting, so that old school kind of Y2K zig. So there's a zig, and then we're gonna go, there's a zag, and then there's a zig, there's a zag, and it's gonna be nice and deep, and we're gonna go all the way until we hit the crown, just for the ease of application. And then wouldn't you just look at that, how pretty that is. There's your zigzag parting. And Mackie, do you wanna be really bright around your face, or do you want a little bit of depth?
Probably bright.
And I'm gonna draw this all of the way through the ends. And when I'm done with it, I'm going to twist the entire thing, making sure, you really wanna make sure, I need to stress this again because it's just all about saturation. And almost like we're overlapping a little bit of the previous color. So you're kind of creating almost like a level in between that 7 and that like almost 9, right? And kind of just brushing it in, but we're not touching the roots with this color. Which is why I wanted to have some kind of gradients through the top, because this is such a bright copper. See, there you can see we're kind of separating out. So it's just laying on top of her root color, and then that's laying on top of the one I just did. So we're doing the opposite so that the top stands out. Because what happens is when you create depth underneath brightness, you're giving it a backdrop. And we've heard this before, right? It's just these different sectioning patterns that like can save you a ton of time and just give you some really fun ideas on how to change it up and how to, yeah, just do something different behind the chair that gives you like a really fun and unique result and end result. Now I'm gonna kind of place these straight down so that I can work through the back here, which we're already getting a little bit of copper in there, which is okay, because it's all playing together very nicely. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the opposite side, then we'll see you for the back section. Looking a little Star Wars character, or maybe some kind of high fashion runway situation, but loving these twists. We're gonna work our way just really simply up the back with those same zigzag partings. If it's easier, you could take a subsection of the amount of hair that you know you can handle, right? I'm actually not subdividing it into 2 sections. You can, if that's easier for you, but I'm working all the way up the back, taking an entire section down, right? Just clipping that up and out of the way, and then doing that vertical zigzag part here, right? So in these 2 outside corners, I'm gonna do my color with most depth, and I'm gonna run that all the way through the ends, right? Dividing it about in half. So we'll have like 1, 2, 3 sections of this madness, right? Twisting that up and away, and then giving myself these big, beautiful vertical partings. And in a perfect world, they would kind of bricklay. So it's like this one goes in between that one, right? And you get all this beautiful variegated color. Just kind of dividing that out. I guess you could even like section this as you apply the color, right? I'm just gonna give it a nice pre-section so it's so clean and obvious exactly where these colors are going. And now I can just work my across from one end to the other. So I did that depth before. I'm gonna do a nice bright piece right here. There's something about like when you have kind of an more intense hair color. So she's getting soft and kind and loving and wonderful and just genuine and forgiving and all the wonderful things. I know, I mean, we can overcomplicate it easily, but I think that it's so cool to be able to just kind of use two colors that are monochromatic, almost close to the same tone with very different developers, right? And working them in a way that is so extreme because the colors are so close in tonality. It's a punchy color, but it's gonna be really soft in essence, right? So let's do this last section, just like the top, and even in through the sides here, I did tip out with that paler color a little bit. I did draw the depth through this underneath part because this is gonna kind of just stack out and be covered by all the rest of this hair. So I know what I did through the top here, and I'm gonna mimic that right here in the back. So the tops of the fatter triangles versus the peak of the triangle is going to be more depth, and then the peak of the triangle is gonna be the brighter color looking like more highlights. So here we are. This would be considered a peak of the triangle, so I'm gonna go in with my pop and my brighter color all the way through. This through there. Looks so pretty with the kind of coral and the violet. It's so crazy. Copper always looks so different when it's oxidizing than what it really comes out like, you know? A lot of times, like in Wella particularly, but you just have to train your eye to whatever it is, the color line that you use. But Wella in particular, it can be scary. It can look dark, like a dark, dark purple, and then you rinse it and it's like a bright copper. So you have to kind of know what you're looking at and be used to seeing, training your eye to be used to seeing what that color typically comes out like. Now, because I already have this paler color on my hands, I'm gonna just wipe my hands off and kind of use what's rest on my brush to tip out the ends of the next section before I go in with that, drop some clips, before I go in with the deeper color right here. And we'll work through, twist this out, and give you a little run around, a little 360 view of what this is gonna look like. So you can see how everything's in its own lane, but also, you know, a little bit blended together. And when I was blow drying it and curling it, it's so fun to see all of the variations of colors. So like I said, very monochromatic, right? But can you see those like flecks of brightness and those like pops and so you see the brightness and the depth, but you're kind of like, don't realize how intentional all of that was without having to do this like crazy like highlighting process, right? So you can really see it actually in her bangs right there, how it's like brighter here in the front. Remember we did that front piece, and then you can see that low light, and then you can see the brightness, and then the brightness through the ends. And that also really shows when you kind of like pull this back and you see like the highs and lows more so through the underneath, and then how much brighter it is on top. So it all is in there, but it's that the beauty is in the monochromatic ness of it all, that it's all kind of the same tonal family, even close to the same level. We were dealing with levels like 9, 8, and 7 in gold reds and red reds and all of the above, but then we used 40 volume to get the highlights, and we used 20 volume, so we kept all of the developers really hot and at a higher level. I didn't use any 10 volumes, and then because sometimes I would use a 10 volume on the root to make sure it doesn't get too hot. I knew I was going to use that 40 volume for those highs and lows. So even if she has like a a lighter root, it's that same, even it kind of is the same, mimicking what the 40 volume did. See how it's like same from root to ends in the highlight from the 40 volume, whereas like if I just did 20 volumes on her roots and then I pulled it all the way through on the low light areas, you would actually probably have a little bit of hot roots, because typically you'd have to mix in some browns at the root level to not get hot roots. But all of that explanation is just because I want you to kind of understand why it was okay, and I felt okay with her roots being a little hotter, was because I knew the whole thing was going to be hot, and no, pun totally intended, but especially because of that 40 volume, right? We wanted it bright, and pale, and kind of blonde, like in the blonde family as far as copper goes, right? She's obviously a redhead, but when I say blonde, I mean like a higher level. She's in that 7, 8, 9 level.